Imagine walking through a shattered rail yard outside Poznan in the spring of 1945. Smoke still clings to the horizon. The mud is thick with oil, ash, and the wreckage of a retreating army. Rows of German military trucks sit abandoned, engines cold, canvas covers torn and flapping in the wind. Some still carry their Wehrmacht markings, half scrubbed by soldiers who ran out of time. Others have been stripped, burned, or pushed into ditches by units that had no fuel left and no will to drive them further west. In this rare photo, we see Soviet and Polish soldiers moving carefully between the vehicles, rifles slung, unsure whether the trucks are booby-trapped. Some of them are. Retreating German units had standing orders to sabotage anything useful to the enemy, grenades wired to ignition switches, fuel tanks rigged to detonate on contact. Nearby, a farmer watches from behind a fence line, waiting for the soldiers to move on so he can strip whatever is left. The war was over, but a new mystery was just beginning. What really happened to these captured German trucks after the guns fell silent? By 1945, the German war machine had produced staggering numbers of military transport vehicles. The Opel Blitz alone reached over 130,000 units, alongside tens of thousands of Büssing-Nag, Mercedes-Benz, Ford, and Krupp trucks that had hauled troops, ammunition, and supplies across every front from Stalingrad to Normandy to the Balkans. These vehicles were not glamorous like tanks or fighter planes, but they were the circulatory system of the entire war effort. Without them, artillery had no shells, infantry had no rations, and entire divisions simply stopped functioning. When Germany collapsed, hundreds of thousands of these trucks were suddenly scattered across a broken continent, sitting in fields, forests, rail sidings, and factory yards, with no clear owner and no clear future. Some were fully fueled and operational. Others were burned wrecks. Many sat somewhere in between, salvageable but stranded, waiting for someone to decide their fate. The immediate aftermath was chaos, and it unfolded differently depending on which army arrived first. In the first weeks after surrender, control of these vehicles fell to whichever force happened to be standing nearest when the fighting stopped. In the West, American and British units rounded up thousands of trucks into massive holding yards, tagging them for inventory under strict occupation protocols. Some were kept for Allied logistics use almost immediately, repainted with white stars or Union Jacks within days. Others were simply parked under tarps and left to rust, while officers argued over what to do with them. In the East, it was the Red Army and the newly forming Polish administration who inherited the largest share, since so much of the German logistics network had passed directly through Polish territory during the war's final collapsing months. Picture a Polish rail depot in the summer of 1945. Rows of captured trucks lined up under armed guard, farmers and scavengers hovering just beyond the fence line, waiting for the moment a soldier turned his back. Looting was constant and almost impossible to stop. Fuel was worth more than gold in a country with no functioning economy, and a single working German truck could feed a family for a year on the black market, its tires alone worth a small fortune to anyone rebuilding a farm from nothing. Local administrators, many of them barely into their positions, had no consistent policy. Some ordered immediate destruction of anything bearing German markings, treating the vehicles as symbols of an occupation still too raw to look at. Others saw the trucks as too valuable to waste in a country where nearly every road, bridge, and rail line had been bombed into rubble. This disagreement between destruction and preservation would define almost everything that happened over the following decade. Destruction came first, and it hit hardest. Across occupied Germany and liberated Poland, Allied and Soviet authorities ordered the systematic scrapping of enormous portions of the captured fleet, partly to prevent remnants of German military power from resurfacing in any future conflict, and partly because post-war economies desperately needed raw steel more than they needed old trucks. Picture entire fields of vehicles being fed into crushing presses, their frames folded into blocks of scrap metal that would later become railway tracks, tractors, or the girders of rebuilt bridges. Photographs from the period show mountains of flattened truck cabs stacked like discarded tin cans, a physical monument to how thoroughly a war machine can be dismantled once the ideology behind it collapses. Entire convoys that had once carried German infantry toward the front were now driven, one final time, directly into scrapyards, their engines shut off for good. In Poland specifically, the story takes its strangest turn. Rather than scrapping every vehicle immediately, Polish authorities quietly began sealing selected batches of captured German trucks inside repurposed warehouses and underground storage bunkers, some of them originally built by the Germans themselves as supply depots for the Eastern Front. These were not museum pieces, and they were not sentimental preservation projects. They were strategic assets held in reserve in case the fragile post-war peace collapsed into renewed conflict, particularly as tensions with the West hardened into what would soon be called the Cold War. Military planners understood that a captured truck fleet, properly maintained and sealed away from weather and looting, represented instant mobility for any future crisis. Without the years of manufacturing time, a country still rebuilding from rubble simply did not have. Reuse and repurposing formed the second wave, and it was far more widespread than most people realize today. Thousands of captured trucks were formally handed over to the new Polish People's Army, repainted, replated, and pressed into active service hauling reconstruction materials through cities that had been reduced to rubble, Warsaw especially, where nearly every street required truckloads of brick and timber just to become passable again. Other vehicles were distributed to state farms across the countryside, where an Opel Blitz that once carried ammunition crates to the Eastern Front now hauled grain, potatoes, or livestock through quiet Polish villages, its swastika insignia sanded off and replaced with plain civilian registration numbers. Some vehicles were shipped east into the Soviet Union entirely, absorbed into a logistics network stretching from Belarus to the Ural Mountains, disappearing so completely into Soviet military records that tracing their individual histories today is nearly impossible. A smaller number of vehicles, particularly specialized workshop and engineering trucks, were sent to secret testing grounds, where military engineers studied German suspension systems, engine designs, and armor plating for clues that might improve Soviet bloc vehicle production in the years ahead. German engineering, whatever its politics, was respected, and reverse engineering captured hardware was standard practice across every occupying power, not just in the East. The sealed Polish warehouses played a quiet but critical role in this process, functioning almost like a strategic parts bank, vehicles kept intact and battle-ready, hidden from public record, occasionally opened only when specific components were needed for a research project or a military exercise that never made it into any newspaper. The rare survivors of this story are where things get genuinely strange and where the mystery deepens rather than resolves. In one documented case, a cluster of trucks sealed inside a converted munitions bunker near Wrocław sat completely untouched for decades, so thoroughly forgotten that local officials themselves eventually lost track of what the building actually contained. When the site was finally reopened during a routine property survey generations later, inspectors found rows of vehicles still coated in preservative grease, tires perished into brittle rubber, but frames remarkably intact, essentially a time capsule of 1945 sealed inside concrete and steel, undisturbed while the country outside transformed entirely. In another case, a single bussing nag truck, briefly used by Polish partisans in the immediate post-war period, was later sold into private hands, passing through 3 different owners who had no idea of its wartime service. It was only identified decades afterward when a restoration specialist stripping layers of repainted civilian paint discovered faint stenciled unit markings still visible beneath the surface, a ghost signature of its original German owners hiding under decades of Polish farm life. There are stranger footnotes still, the kind that keep viewers leaning closer to the screen. Some captured trucks shipped east ended up, remarkably, back in active conflict less than a decade later, repurposed by Soviet-aligned forces during regional tensions in the early Cold War, meaning vehicles built for Hitler's army were now serving entirely different masters in an entirely different ideological war. Other trucks, quietly sold off through state disposal auctions during the 1950s, vanished into ordinary civilian life so completely that families used them for farm work well into the 1970s, utterly unaware their tractor-hauling workhorse had once carried German infantry across occupied territory. Neighbors who saw the same truck parked outside a barn for 30 years had no idea they were looking at a relic of the Wehrmacht's logistics network. Perhaps strangest of all, several of the sealed warehouse batches in Poland were never fully catalogued, even by the state itself. Records were incomplete, transferred between departments, lost in bureaucratic reshuffling, or simply never prioritized in a country focused on rebuilding rather than record-keeping. This meant that for years afterward, nobody in the Polish government could say with total certainty exactly how many trucks remained hidden, or precisely where every sealed depot was located. Some of these locations were only rediscovered decades later, during unrelated infrastructure projects, when construction crews broke through walls expecting empty storage space and instead found rows of preserved German vehicles waiting exactly where they had been left. Today, the surviving vehicles occupy a strange space between forgotten and treasured. A handful sit fully restored in military museums across Poland and Germany, engines rebuilt, paintwork returned to original wartime specifications, displayed as tangible artifacts of a collapsed empire's logistics machine. Visitors walk past them without realizing how close these particular trucks came to being melted down entirely, saved only by a bureaucratic decision made in 1945 that could easily have gone the other way. Others remain in private collections, owned by enthusiasts who spend years tracing chassis numbers through fragmented post-war records just to confirm a single truck's authentic origin, piecing together a vehicle's entire life story from faded stencils, rust patterns, and archival fragments scattered across 3 different countries. And some, almost certainly, remain exactly where they were left generations ago, sealed inside forgotten Polish depots that were never fully inventoried, waiting for a survey team, a demolition crew, or a curious historian to stumble across a door that has not been opened since the year the war ended. Every few years, a new story surfaces, a bunker found during a road expansion, a warehouse cleared out before a building sale, a rusted convoy uncovered beneath decades of undergrowth. Each discovery raises the same question all over again. How many more are still out there, sealed away and forgotten, waiting in the dark? What makes this story resonate is not really about the trucks themselves. It is about what happens to the machinery of a fallen power once the ideology behind it disappears completely. A truck is not a symbol like a flag or an insignia. It is a tool, indifferent to the cause it serves, and that indifference is exactly why it survived in so many strange and unexpected forms, scrapped, repurposed, hidden, forgotten, and occasionally rediscovered by pure accident. These vehicles carried the German war machine across a continent at the height of its power, and then, without ceremony or memorial, they carried grain, coal, and rubble for the very nations they had once helped conquer. In the quiet corners of Polish warehouses, private barns, and half-forgotten bunkers across Central Europe, pieces of that history are still sitting in the dark today, sealed away, patient, waiting for someone to finally open the door,